All right, Steeler fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman of Behind the Steel Curtain, and it's time for another episode of the Steelers Preview as we get you all geared up for Week 18 against the Cleveland Browns at Acrisure Stadium. It's a lot on the line in this game. We're going to talk about that and a lot more. Joining me, as always, Dave Schofield. What's up, Dave?
Not too much, Jeff. You look like a tired gym teacher or something like that. Someone who has to go back after a couple weeks off on vacation.
Thursdays are long days, no matter what I'm doing in my other job. So yeah, Bryan Anthony Davis. What's up, Bryan?
Who would have thunk all this, boys? Who would have thunk it?
Not me. I laughed at anyone that brought up the term playoffs, even before the Ravens game in Week 14. But let's talk about the AFC playoffs. Let's get this show on the road, and we've got a lot to discuss. For those of you that want to stay up to date on what's happening with the NFL and the AFC, rumors and reports as of this being recorded are that the NFL is going to have a ruling on the suspended Bengals and Bills game from Monday night, and that they're probably going to rule it a no contest, and then they're going to go to winning percentage or something like that for the seeding. They're also contemplating having the AFC Championship game in a neutral site. Indianapolis has been discussed as the location. That's just been one area that's been tossed out there. It's also right in the middle of Kansas City and Buffalo in terms of travel distance. And I think that's kind of what they're looking at, to assume that maybe that's where the two teams will be coming from. But still, this is not really going to impact the Steelers too much. Just want to lay that out there. But I want to talk with you all about the scenario that needs to take place for the Steelers to get in. We know the Steelers need to win. We know that the Jets need to beat the Dolphins. Let's talk about that game first. Everyone thought it was going to be Mike White. It might not be Mike White now. Reports had a New Yorker that Mike White might not be the quarterback. I don't know if they go to Flacco or if there's another quarterback that I don't even know is on the. Who's the guy that Zach Wilson? Is he still on the roster? Or is he on injured reserve or what? Is he an option? Dave, what's going on? You know?
I don't know. All I know is that the Jets were favored by 1.5 points. And earlier today, when I ran my 3 games to watch article, must watch games for Steelers fans. And now they are 2.5 point underdogs. So whatever's going on there, it's really in flux. But the quarterback situation in Miami isn't great. But Jeff, you kind of missed something else that they're talking about. Man, the Steelers might not need the Jets to win this game.
Well, I haven't heard. Are you talking about the 8th team?
They're talking about that as a possibility. So no team would get an advantage by having a bye. Have
you heard that from anyone other than Florio at Pro Football Talk?
I have some other places, but okay. I don't know if they only heard it from Florio.
Okay.
I don't know, but Bryan should be an expert on this. Bryan, how many teams did they send to the playoffs in 1982 in the strike year?
8 teams
per conference, right?
Yes. So there were 16 teams. There was 28 teams in the league back then, and they sent 16, and it was a really cool tournament. It started a couple days after Christmas. I believe it was January 3rd. That Steelers were the 4th seed, and they played the 5th seed San Diego Chargers, and it was actually a really exciting game. But that was one that they went ahead and did because of that 9-game strike season, and the cream rose to the top. You didn't really have any teams that did not deserve to be in the Super Bowl not there. You had the Dolphins, and you had the Redskins back then in that Super Bowl, and the right teams made it.
Yeah, good. So it's not unprecedented, but I'm like back to the Jets game. Sorry that I kind of cut off on that. That's the wild card. You really don't know. But look, last year, did you really ever expect the Jags to beat the Colts? So you don't know what could happen in any of these games. It's nice to watch. We're going to check the scoreboard. I'm really glad that I'm not going to be watching those games intently, because I'm really just going to be focused on the Steelers game.
Right. Yeah, for sure. It's going to be that is the game that scares me the most out of the triumphant that needs to happen, of the Steelers winning, the Jets winning, and then the Bills. And, there's some people in the live chat that are already saying if it goes into a no contest, could that impact the Bills wanting to rest players? Dave, what do you want to say?
They basically didn't play much last week. Yeah. If you're talking about resting players, you're talking about a long layoff there. I think, and especially with everything the team's gone through, I think they want to go out. If they rest players, I would see it more as a second half of the game rest of players. And I think they could just come out and just be an inspired team and just smack New England in the mouth and then just say, you know what, we're on cruise control.
What do you think about that game, Bryan?
I would actually be shocked. I mean, really shocked if Josh Allen and guys like that were like, yeah, I want to sit down. I don't want to play this game. They want to go out. I mean, I'm speaking for them, yes, but I know the mentality of these players. If they are going to be playing an NFL football game, they want to be out there to honor their injured, fallen teammate.
Yes, and they got great news on that front from him. I'm sure that was a relief that he's cognitively he's fine, that he was able to respond in written form, but he's still considered in critical condition. It's good news on that front, and so positive thoughts still being sent his way and everyone else that's impacted by that in some way. Last question before we move on. Regardless of the Steelers game, we'll get to our predictions later in the show. Does everything fall into place that needs to fall into place in your opinion, not counting the Steelers? Bryan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I really think it does. Because one thing that you forget about the New York Jets is that's a nasty defense. And realize how tough it was for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Albeit it was week 4, I get it. That was not the team that they are now, but they were suffocating on defense, and it was not easy to move the ball against them when they had opportunities to do so. The Jets have a good defense. They have some young players on that offense, and whoever the quarterback is going to be more experienced than Skylar Thompson on the other side of the ball. Now, granted, if you have a good game plan, if you're the Miami Dolphins and you're running the football and you're running it well, and you do you've got an offensive genius as your head coach, there's some things that you can get done when you have a Tyreek Hill, when you have a Jalen Waddle. But the running game is not menacing for the Dolphins, and I feel like the Jets can take care of business. And wouldn't it be fitting for a guy like Joe Flacco, who doesn't have many NFL starts left in him, to go out and have a swan song?
Gosh, rescued by Joe Flacco. Could you imagine? Dave, what about you? Do you think that everything will fall into place?
Do I think I will? It very well could. I mean, I love this morning that was the way it was favored. I actually like it better now that it's not, because look at last week. The Steelers were underdogs. The Seahawks were underdogs at home to the Jets. But yet those things happened. If everything's favored, I don't really like it. It's set up to where it's a possibility, but I'm going to keep saying it. I've been saying it a bunch. All that really matters is the Steelers have to do their part. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, then you've got to realize, hey, next year we got to do better than start off 2-6 in order to not. So that way we control our own destiny and don't have to depend so much on other things happening.
I think it does fall their way. I think the Jets find a way to beat the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins are just a sinking ship at this point. And I think they also have a better defense. I like the Buffalo Bills playing inspired football, wanting to go out there and win one for their teammate, to win it all for their teammate. So absolutely, I think that, I think it does break their way. Let's hope so. But I mean, we're all going to be scoreboard watching. I'm going to be probably having the Sunday Ticket app on my phone, watching certain games, and the Steeler game on the TV. It's going to be crazy. So it should be a lot of fun. I want to bring up Coach Mike Tomlin for a second. Dave, you have a clip from the Rich Eisen show that you want to play. I want to bring up a discussion here. Why don't you go and play that clip right now for the listeners?
All right. Well, did you want the Tomlin clip or did you want the making the playoffs clip?
Let's do
play them both.
Play them both. What the
heck?
All right. Well, let's do the one about who Rich Eisen talked about as getting in as the last part of the playoffs, because I actually have that one loaded first. So here it is.
Okay.
You look at all the teams that are in the mix for this final seed. The one you don't want to face, the one that I think would be the best team heading in with a head of steam, is a team with multiple Pro Bowlers, if not all pro players on defense, an offense with a very stout big boy pants running back and a whole bunch of young players that just don't know what they don't know. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are really playing well.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go to the other one. I'll merge them two together for the discussion afterwards.
Oh, all right. Here we go. Because this followed this up. Obviously, this was after the other
If
one.
there's anybody in the Steelers hashtag here we go world that needs that reminder, you have a Hall of Fame head coach. And if you think Mike Tomlin isn't all that or shouldn't be around anymore after all this time, you are, with all due respect, dumb.
With all due respect, calling everyone dumb. What I wanted to bring up, we'll talk about the first clip before we get into Tomlin. Do you buy what Rich Eisen is selling, that the Steelers, we know they're playing their best football right now, and that's something we've all talked about on this show before, that you want to be playing your best football, but just because they're playing their best football doesn't mean that they necessarily could go into Buffalo, Kansas City, or even Cincinnati and win a game. Bryan, I'll ask you first. Do you think the Steelers are the team, if they get in, people are saying, I don't know if I want to play that team in the playoffs?
I think they're definitely saying, I don't want to play that team in the playoffs. That does not mean that the Steelers will go ahead and beat everybody, but they are in a position right now where they could make it tough on you. That doesn't mean that they're going to go into Kansas City and beat Mahomes and the Chiefs, but they could make Mahomes and the Chiefs nervous. They could rattle Josh Allen for a quarter or two and keep it close. They're not a team that's going to get blown out like they did in week 5 or even week 8 to the Eagles. They're a team that can play a lot better football because they're figuring out who they are. And when a team knows who they are, guys, they're dangerous.
Dave, what do you think?
All right. Well, first of all, we got to give a shout out to what Ian's talking about. They actually had that second clip on their show today. That got me looking at the whole segment, and that's what had me read it all. Listen to it all. What wasn't played here, and sorry I don't have it set up, is that it said, do any of these teams, if you're going to pick which teams you have to play right now, if you're one of those, if those mainly those top 3 teams, do you really want to have the Steelers? He's like, do you think Cincinnati really wants any piece of the Steelers having to come into their house? Again, he's like, not the way they're playing now. And yes, I know the Steelers, the teams that they've beat, a lot of them have had similar records as the Steelers did at the time they played them, and now they don't, because the Steelers beat them and took care of business, with the exception of the Baltimore Ravens, who were missing their quarterback. But I've said it so many times. Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? I said, let me get to the end of the regular season. Look at the last 4 games leading up to it. You look at the team that's playing well, teams that are 3-1 or 4-0 in their last 4 games. If the Steelers are going to make it in, they've got to go 4-0 in their last 4 games. You don't want to face a team that's coming in 4-0 in their last 4 games, because that's the kind of teams that made a Super Bowl run last year and in previous years. The teams that are, winning most of their games at the end just to get in. It doesn't have to be that you're the number 1 seed in order to roll through. We saw that last year. You need to be playing your best football at the end. Now, is the Steelers' best football still good enough to take down, if they have to run the gauntlet of going to all 3 of them, Cincinnati, Buffalo, Kansas City, in order, if they continue to win? That's a really big task, but man, it would be nice to see how they're doing to just even get the first one of those and see how this team responds to being in the playoffs at this time. That's ultimately what we want to see in order to get the experience to roll into 2023.
Yeah, it's good. They're definitely a team. They're kind of like the antithesis of 2020. When you think back to the Steelers 2020 season, they start out 11-0 and they just start losing these games. They have to win a crazy game against Indianapolis to be able to get into the playoffs. They just kind of limped in. The Steelers are hitting their stride, it seems like, right now, and so we'll see how things play out. Let's go to the other clip from Eisen, and that was talking about Mike Tomlin. I'm going to ask you all a simple question and get your thoughts. Do you think this is Mike Tomlin's best coaching job to date? Remember, he's been here since 2007. Bryan, we'll start with you. Do you think this is Mike Tomlin's best coaching job of his time in Pittsburgh?
No, I do not. And here's the reason why. I feel like this is a typical Mike Tomlin coaching job when they start out poorly. I think this is the kind of coaching job that Mike Tomlin will always do when this team is seemingly done at the midpoint of the season. I think this guy, Mike Tomlin, tells his players, all right, there is no end of the season until January. And you still have time to turn it around. One thing that Mike Tomlin does better than most of the coaches in this league, he's a salesman to his team. He gets this team to believe anything. If they were in Alaska, he could sell them on how ice would benefit them, because this is Mike Tomlin. This is what he does. He gets them fired up, and he does a lot more than any of us know. But you know who does know? Guys like Vince Williams that say, you don't understand what he does on the sidelines, even on the offensive side of the ball, when we were down in Jacksonville in this game, and what he does and how he says to approach it. He's always coaching down there, and we just know what we want to know. But the reason I'm saying it's not his best coaching season, it's because he's had a lot of best coaching seasons. They're all different, but he always makes sure that his team's ready to play. So that means this is another season in the great career of Mike Tomlin.
All right, Dave, what are your thoughts?
I think Bryan summed that up pretty well. As it's hard because we don't always acknowledge how good of a job that he has done in other years, and where people don't always realize it, and you're going to get your hashtag fire Tomlins in there, is that they always believe that the Steelers have so much talent and they should be doing more. Look at this roster. I mean, I did this against the Eagles, and people said, you should keep doing this every week. I'm like, I'd be talking about the same players for the Steelers. When the Steelers lost to the Eagles, I'm like, how many players, if these two teams, if you had to make the Steagles again, although they were never technically called the Steagles, they were just affectionately known as the Steagles. If you had to combine those two teams again, how many players would be starting from Pittsburgh's roster? It was just a handful. It was not many at all. I mean, TJ Watt was still out, things of that nature. And you're like, how do you expect the team to win when the other team's roster is that much better than yours? I think the questions change now because these players have improved so much, and you want to see players on the rise. And sometimes people take for granted. They think that the Steelers might have more loaded talent because they look at the bottom line is they look at fantasy football positions as much as anything. Sometimes I think that blinds people's reality of looking at a whole team, because they look at these fantasy players. I mean, have there really been any really good fantasy players for the Steelers this year in fantasy football? No, not really. So, but in the past, like, they had all these great players and they didn't win with them. Did they really have a complete team? But I think we'll get more of an idea of if this is Mike Tomlin's best coaching job. I think it's going to take probably more than a month after the season's over to really look back and dissect it, because we were asked this on the Scobro show, is Matt Canada saving his job with what's going on here? And I said, they've probably already decided what they're doing with Matt Canada. There's some people that think that he's already kind of been replaced in how much they're letting him do. And there's really that's all speculation. There's not really anything, concrete that's really the situation. And if that's the case, it's because they knew they were already moving on from him. If the Steelers move on from that Canada, it kind of showed you that they were trying to overcome other things that were going on. There's going to be various things like that we might find out more about once the season's over to really understand what was going on. Did we have any clue how bad things were in 2018 when Mr. Third and Fifth went nutso and didn't and left, basically didn't show up to play the final game when the playoffs were on the line. We had no idea. Some of these things will paint the picture a little bit more further down the line. So I think this has the potential to be one of the best years of Mike Tomlin's coaching career, but I still think that there's going to be more information that we get later.
Oh, yeah. Okay. There's both of you had a lot of good stuff to say. I'm going to go simplify it. And I'm going to say that what is the common thing that everyone says about Mike Tomlin? When someone says, well, Tomlin's been to 2 Super Bowls and won one. He did them with Cowher's players. Okay.
Cowher couldn't do them with Cowher's
players. And then they say, then they'll say, well, Tomlin's had he's never had a losing season. Well, he has a future Hall of Fame quarterback. So everyone points then, because you eliminate the Cowher's players majority, you eliminate the quarterback, and it brings 2 seasons, 2019, 2022. 2019, obviously, was the year Ben blew out his elbow. That defense was really, really good, though. I mean, that was prime Stephon Tuitt, Cam Hayward, and Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. He comes in and makes an immediate impact. I think that this season, 2022, I'm going to put above 2019 as Mike Tomlin's best coaching career, best coaching job. And it could even get better. Remember in 2019, they fell apart down the stretch. It's kind of been flip-flop this year. They're finishing strong and making a case for themselves in the postseason. They also went without the defensive player of the year for the vast majority of the first
7
half.
games.
And if you listen to Jeffrey Benedict, read his articles, their winning percentage without Jeffrey Benedict. Their winning percentage without TJ Watt is awful. I mean, forget Ben Roethlisberger. It is awful. And so when you think about how, they didn't win a lot of games without TJ Watt, but they kept the ship afloat, and now they're turning it on. I just think that this has been a phenomenal coaching job. And you listen to players like Miles Jack, who met with media on Thursday, and he talked about being in the same situation, meaning 2-6 in other areas like Jacksonville. And he said, man, there were people that were just worried about their mortgage. Am I going to get cut? Am I going to have a job next year? He said, that was never discussed at 2-6. He said, Mike Tomlin was only focused on the next game. How are we going to get better? How are we going to improve? And when you hear people from the outside talking, because you can listen to players like Cam Hayward. He's been here his entire career. He is nothing but the Steelers culture embedded into his system because he's been here for so long. But then when you hear someone like that talk, you're thinking, man, this is unique. This is different. And this is Mike Tomlin. This is not Bill Cowher. This is Mike Tomlin, and that's his job. And I just think that it's by far, in my opinion, his best, his absolute best. Go ahead, Dave. You want to say something?
Yeah, now I'm trying to remember what it was. that it was. I had something, and you know what? It's gone. Oh, no, I now remember what it was. People, too many fans want to give Mike Tomlin a big butt. Bottom line is, every time you say something about Mike Tomlin, exactly what you're saying, but blah, 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 blah. Every time, oh, well, he's never had a losing season, but, and that's it. Remove the but. Take the butt out of it. And just really, really look at the individual things. And some people are like, well, you can't take the butt out of it. Well, do you have to put it in there? Really? So just look at it on its own merits.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Bryan,
guys,
anything, Dad?
Yeah. I like big butts, and I cannot lie. So, yeah. I mean, there's always going to be the butts. I don't have them for Mike Tomlin, though. Once again, I want to go back to the beginning of what I said. And I agree with everything Jeff said. It has been a phenomenal coaching season. But when you look at it, I think he's put in a bunch of phenomenal coaching seasons, and they all look different.
Yeah. That's a good way to say it. All right, let's talk about this upcoming game and one Deshaun Watson. And this is the title of the podcast. It's time for the Steelers to welcome Deshaun Watson to the rivalry. It's funny, Deshaun Watson's never beaten the Steelers, and I just knocked on wood for those that are superstitious. And when he was with Houston, he never played well. This is going to be a first for him.
He only played once against the Steelers, right?
I thought he had more than one start against Pittsburgh, but I could be wrong.
I don't think he played on Christmas.
If he has one start, then he's 0-1, and he's never beat the Steelers.
Yeah,
so
that was 2020. Yeah,
I thought was that in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
That game was in Pittsburgh. Okay, yeah. So the Steelers are going to have to, hey, let's trial by fire. Let's see what you're made of. Let's come to Pittsburgh and see what you can do. Deshaun Watson so far in his time in Cleveland has been, I'm trying to think of the best word to describe it. It's been spotty. It's been rough at times, really rough start. He had his best game to date so far in last week's win over the Washington Commanders, but it's still not pretty. Even when you watch the highlights, it just is not pretty. So it's going to be interesting. But when you think about Deshaun Watson, and I'm not talking about the off the field stuff, I'm talking about playing football. Bryan, when you think about Deshaun Watson being indoctrinated into this rivalry, what do you think of?
Well, I think it's exciting because he's a player that once he gets all of the rust off, and he has not, because he's throwing at 56%, but he got this contract for a reason, and it had everything to do with what he did with a Houston Texans team that really isn't that good. He now has a running game. He's got a fantastic running game. He's got a guy in Amari Cooper, and he's got an offensive mind as a head coach. And so he's got a lot that has been added in. I'm kind of thinking that if he gets comfortable, he is going to start getting dangerous. But so far since December 4th, December 11th, he has not been sterling yet.
Dave, what do you think about Deshaun Watson?
Well, first of all, just to clarify, in 2017, when the Steelers played the Texans on Christmas Day, the quarterback that day was one TJ Yates. And he was, and at one point, one pass was also thrown by one Tyler Heineke.
Oh, yeah.
So
wow, Heineke.
Yeah, just throwing that out there so people were curious. I think I don't know if he was on IR or just injured or whatever, what was going on there at the time. But no, he didn't play in that game.
Was Tom Savage? Wasn't Tom Savage in that game too?
No, that was a different. No, they didn't face Tom Savage in that one.
Okay.
So, but the thing, I don't. Did you guys get to watch much of the Commanders game or anything with that at all? No. I didn't really feel like. I don't know if that was the commanding win that it looked like of 24-10 commanding win. You like that? Yeah. Because I mean, since Watson took over, they scored 27 points the first game. But remember, I talked about this on Stat Geek. A special teams touchdown, 2 defensive touchdowns, and 2 field goals, one of which was on a turnover where they didn't even get a first down and kick the field goal. So they really only manufactured 3 points offensively in that game. They scored 10 against the Bengals, 13 against the Ravens, 10 against the Saints. Then they got 24 against the Commanders. I don't know if they were figuring it out or not, but in these games, other than the Bengals game, they're very even on their running versus passing. I mean, the last 3 games, it's crazy how close the numbers are. It was 143 rushing to 140 passing. It was 124 rushing to 125 passing against the Saints. It was 146 rushing to 155 passing against the Commanders. That's what they've done the last 3 games. And it's not a lot going on through the air. So I don't, and with the Steelers defense playing the way it is, I don't know that that it almost seems like you're waiting for, hey, is it everything going to click with Deshaun Watson and they're going to come out and pound somebody? This is their last chance to show it. And it doesn't seem like things are really going well in Cleveland, especially if with the report today of Jadeveon Clowney saying, "Yeah, this is going to be my last game. They don't appreciate me around here," and they're still playing football. Those are things players don't usually say when there's still games left.
That's true. Normally, that player doesn't play in the next game.
Yeah.
We have a super chat here. Ian Smith gives us $5 and his prediction says Steelers 24. Browns 20. We will be giving you our predictions a little bit later, but I like that one, and thank you very much for the tip. We appreciate it. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back after this break on the audio side, we're going to talk about the injury report. We're going to do our over-under game, our predictions, and some trivia. If you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, stay tuned. We'll be right back after this. All right, Steeler fans, welcome back. Second half, getting you geared up for this Week 18 game. It's going to be a lot of fun at Acrisure Stadium. Let's talk about the injury report because obviously that's going to be key for the Steelers. Pretty lengthy report, as I saw. Dave, do you have that information handy?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm reading the memo that just came out from the NFL.
Yeah, the NFL canceled the game between the Bengals and Bills, which was like expected.
Yeah, and part of that is because they said it had no implications on who was going to make the postseason. Right. But I mean, it really, if the Bengals beat the Ravens in Week 18, then it wasn't going to affect the AFC North anyway. But if it was the other way around, you'd be like, they're getting kind of handed the North because they can't lose it now. Anyway, what is this injury report?
Injury report, yes,
yes, injury report. There's some interesting stuff going on here, and you could say some of it's concerning, but I'm not at DEFCON 5 yet, right, Jeff?
DEFCON 1. DEFCON 1 is the worst. DEFCON 5 is all as well.
I only said that because you explain it every time, and yet you still get people that think that DEFCON 5 is bad. Yeah. So it's like, oh man, it's so bad, it's DEFCON 10. I'm like, no, that would be super
that
great. That would be
New Salem,
rainbows and unicorns. All right, sorry, let's get back to it. Deontay Johnson, after not practicing Wednesday, full participant Thursday. Good news. Trey Norwood, I didn't expect this. He was limited on Thursday. So there's a possibility with him. I just assumed he was going to be out again this week after he didn't practice on Wednesday. Najee Harris was back to practice on Thursday after he was rested on Wednesday. You know, he ran the ball a lot, took a lot of hits. It was the Ravens. You kind of expect people to be dinged up a little bit. Arthur Millet's missed the last 2 practices due to illness. Minkah Fitzpatrick did not practice either day because of his ankle. Coach Tomlin said he didn't expect it to affect the game. I thought maybe he would be back as a limited participant Thursday, but maybe they're just saying, you know what, we're just going to rest him even more. But if you think the Steelers were resting a lot of players, wait till you get to the Browns injury report. James Pierre, full participant in the NFL's concussion protocol both days. So wouldn't be shocked if he comes out of that. Miles Jack did not practice either day. I wouldn't be shocked if they say, you know what, if you go to get going and you're just going to get injured in game, we might just keep you out of this one. Kevin Dotson came back as a full participant Thursday after missing Wednesday with a shoulder. Larry Ogunjobi, no surprise with his toe. He missed both days. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't practice Friday and still plays in the game. Cam Hayward got his typical Thursday day of rest, and another new one for Thursday. Alex Highsmith showed up limited with an ankle. Now, the only thing that's concerning, not the only thing, but the biggest concern with this would be, did this happen in practice? Because sometimes when you get those limited in a practice, it's because something happened in practice and then they couldn't finish practice. It could be that I'm not saying this with Highsmith, but just in general for an injury, it could be you got 5 minutes left in practice. You kind of stepped funny. And you're like, oh man, my ankle. They're like, just sit out these last few reps. That could be limited. Or it could be someone in practice, they had to get carried off on a stretcher. And therefore, because they were part of practice, it was limited. You don't know where it falls. So got to look on Friday to see if that's something to be concerned about or not.
Yeah. I actually am not concerned about this injury report too much. There was only, as kind of expected. I think Minkah, even if he doesn't practice, could still play. I don't think there's any way he's not playing in this game. Bryan, what about you when you think about the injury report?
I'm with you on this one. Not much concerns me. I feel you get to this point of the season where you have some trends, and one of the trends, like Dave just mentioned, don't worry about Larry O. That toe, he's going to go because he's always going to be on the injury report this season, and he balls out. And he plays through pain or whatever is going on with him. One thing I wanted to bring up, and of course it's not on the injury report because his window is open, but it's interesting to see and to wonder what might happen with a guy like William Jackson III. If they feel he's healthy enough, do you fellas think that you possibly see this guy play?
I mean, I'll say that the Steelers have never, that's a non-kicker, started someone the same week that I can think of. They did with Boswell this so when they start the 21-day window, I don't think they've ever brought that guy onto the 53-man roster that isn't a kicker. Dave, am I correct in that line of
recently?
Yeah.
I think Bud
ever
Dupree,
since isn't that one of them?
Well,
someone said Bud Dupree did one time.
Because I think since they shortened it to 4 weeks, or sorry, 4 games, because if the bye week's in there, it doesn't count as one. Because it used to be 8, and when it was 8, sometimes you're like, all right, we're ready to get this player back now, and they came back right after 8, came back to practice, and then was ready to play that week. Since they shortened it to 4, which has only been, what was it, last year and this year, I think it is, maybe. It's because then I think it was 6 at one point in there. I can't remember because they've changed it so much that they haven't done that. It basically would be a player who if they're bringing them back at the very earliest they could bring them back to practice, then they would have them activated for the game. The fact that William Jackson could have been brought back to practice several weeks ago and wasn't, and they waited until this week, that's something that doesn't bode well for them adding him this week.
Yeah, I think if anything, maybe Akello Witherspoon gets added this week.
Yeah.
Because his window was started last week. He played awful against the Browns in week 3. That was when he re-injured his hamstring, or was that when that's when he injured it the first time? That was when he injured his hamstring. So yeah, I don't think so. If I'm putting money down, I'm not putting money on William Jackson being activated, to answer your question. Dave, I'll tell you, when we go to the other side of the docket here for the injury report with the Browns, if they're just resting players, don't even read their name. Like, just talk about players that are actually hurt.
Yeah, because that's they've had players that have rested both Wednesday and Thursday. Yeah. So for people that are like, oh no, they didn't practice at all, that's what the Browns are doing too. They're even just listing them as rest. For example, I'll just give you one. Well, actually, I'll give you 2 because there were 2 right off the top. Both the guard Joel Bitonio and Jadeveon Clowney. That's 2 players that's an example that they just haven't practiced at all this week. That's not uncommon when you're talking about the 18th week, which this is only the second season we've had a chance to talk about the 18th week. But you've got like Conklin didn't practice with an ankle. Amari Cooper said not injury-related rest /hip. So I don't know how you could say both not injury-related and listed injury. But the Steelers do that too. He was limited on Thursday. See, Myles Garrett was another rest. Here we go. Running back, is that David Johnson? It's D Johnson. I don't know which Johnson.
I don't know why the Steelers.
The Ernest
Johnson. Thank you. What was that, Jeff?
I don't know why the Steelers didn't put first names on the.
I know.
It's just,
I don't know.
I love that. I love that organization, man. Love them. Love them.
But he was limited with the shoulder. Ward, the cornerback. I think I said it one show he was a safety, but no, he's a cornerback. Shoulder did not practice. Personal reason.
Yep.
Yeah, that was Denzel. There was a guard, Forbes, that missed for a personal reason. Center, is that? I don't even know. I think it's the reserve. POCIC. I don't know. Illness, didn't play. And defensive end, Thomas Foote, did not practice. Thanks for the first name, Steelers. I appreciate it.
Gosh. Intern was trying to get to Thirsty Thursdays early. I don't have time for first names. Let's go. We got to go.
It's Tequila Cowboys, baby.
Todd Haley's there tonight. Let's go. All right. Okay, let's move on to the over-under game. Bryan, do you have the updated ranks?
Yes, I do. I am still leading, but I'm only leading by 1 because I had a terrible week last week. Jeff had a fantastic week. Jeff's in second, and then Dave is behind Jeff by 2. So anything can happen this week.
See, that's all because you guys made me do the quarterback thing last week and didn't do it the other time against the Ravens, or else that cost me 2.
Do you want some cheese with that wine?
Yeah,
or what?
Of course.
Break out the little violin as you cry about it, because you could have picked either way. You didn't have to pick the over.
And
you just chose the over.
And if we go back in time,
you go back and say this, Jeff. You're like, oh, well, because I did this, Dave has to take the over this time.
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did. Go back. It's on tape, Jeff. Keep your receipts.
Yes, but you know what, Dave? I'm siding with Jefferson because you had every opportunity. We said, go ahead. You brought it up, and you're like, no. It won't be fair to you guys. Well, you would have won it.
There is no fair in the over-under game, Dave.
Exactly.
I'll tell you that every now and then there's an over-under that I'm like, I go out on a limb and I get it, and I'm super proud of it. It was last week. Baltimore's team rushing yards was 125.5.
Oh my gosh.
And I took the under. Good. I took the under.
Yeah.
And they got 120.
Yes,
like,
120
I'm
exactly.
so proud of that one.
I think you just go to Vegas, man, and you just
if they're hiring, I'm all about it. All right. Let's get this show on the road. Let's start off with Rock to the Naj. We didn't do KP8 last week. We're not doing it this week either. Najee Jerome Harris, his full name is what we use here. Rushing yards, 80.5 yards. 80.5. Dave, over under.
Over.
All right. What about you, Brian?
Over.
I, too, am thinking over. My only hesitation was if Jaylen Warren is going to eat into his total a little bit. But I'm going to go over. I think Rock to the Naj is going to be a theme for this week. Let's go to the next one. Pittsburgh Steelers total rushing yards. Total rushing yards. One a little egregious here. I have 135.5. 135.5. Dave, what do you think?
Sorry, I'm still reading this memo. What was 135.5?
Here's about the memo. 135.5.
Oh, I got 135.5. I didn't get the question.
No, team Steelers rushing yards as a team.
Okay, 135. I'm going over with that as well.
Okay. What about you, Brian?
I'm actually going to go under.
I'm going to go over. I think KP8 might get some rushing yards here that might tip the scale a little bit. How about this one? This is a fun one. We always love this one. Little Deontay Johnson touchdown action. DJ touchdown. That's set at a half. He hasn't hit pay dirt yet. Dave, does he do it this week or not?
Oh, my.
Last week, you could be over.
I'm going under.
Oh, okay. Brian?
I'm going over. I think he's got to get one of these times.
Welcome to the club, Dave. It's the under club. DJ's not scoring again, so I've got the under. Yeah. All right, let's go.
If you guys listen to Stat Geek, over the last 3 games, the Browns have the best pass defense in the NFL.
Yeah, but it just takes one good rub route in the red zone, and he scores.
Yep.
So, all right, let's go, Pat.
How much you want to bet the Browns are like, we'll triple team this guy in the red zone just to make sure he doesn't get a touchdown against us. That's his only one. So
no, they're doing it. They would be doing it.
They're going to let Freiermuth run with nobody on him just because they don't want DJ to get one.
No, the Browns listen to the show, and then they're going to do it just to screw me.
Yeah.
To explain the over-under, Thomas Riley asked, how do you get a half a touchdown? Well, you don't. So you have to pick one or the other. You either, you can't. Over or under. Yeah, there's no push.
Yeah.
Okay, Pat Freiermuth yards. Total yards for Pat Freiermuth, 45.5. Dave, what do you think?
Didn't he lead them in yards last week and didn't even get 40? No one got over 40.
I think.
Yeah, no one got over 40. This week, Freiermuth, you said what'd you say that 40
receiving yards?
40 what you
45,
said?
45.5.
45.5. I'm going to go over. And I'll explain that later.
All right, Brian.
I like the over on this as well, because I really think that if that is the best passing defense, then over the middle, Freiermuth is going to thrive.
I'm going to join you all with over. I'm thinking around 50. Let's go defensive takeaways. Defensive takeaways, 1.5. Dave, what do you think?
I am going to go. I'm going to go under. I'm going to go 1.
All right. Brian?
I'm actually going to go over. I like the 2.
I'm going to go under with 1 as well. Let's talk the last one. Steelers sacks of Mr. Watson. I just have the line set at a modest 2.5. Dave, what do you think?
I'm going to go under with 2.
Okay. What about you, Brian?
I am going under with 2.
Going over 3. Going over with 3. Did you get all that, Brian? Any repeated?
I've got it all.
Look at that. Look at that. There you go. All right, what is the current spread before we get into our predictions?
The current spread is the Steelers by 2.5. And the over-under is 40.5.
Man.
40.5?
Yeah.
Yep.
Gosh, I look at my score. It's hysterical. Okay. Dave, why don't you go ahead and go first? What's your prediction? How do you see it shaking out?
All right. I see it shaking out. The Steelers are at home, and they're facing the Browns. Now, the only difference is it's not Ben Roethlisberger at home. And if you listen to Ben Roethlisberger on his podcast this week, where he gave some praise to Kenny Pickett, he kind of also took a shot at the Browns. He's like, but the Steelers get the Browns at home this week. So he's basically already – Ben Roethlisberger has it chalked up as a win, but it's not Ben Roethlisberger who's owned the Browns for forever. But you know what? I think it's Kenny Pickett's turn to own the Browns. I'm going Steelers victorious 24-13.
Ooh, okay. I like it. What about you, Bryan? What's your prediction? What's your score?
You know, I haven't broken out the magical 29, and I'm going to do it today. Steelers 21, the Browns 24.
Wait. You have the Steelers losing?
Steelers 29.
Oh, 29, because before he said 21. All right, so
well,
29
that's not magical. The 29's magical.
No, I just probably misheard. So 29
it's the unicorn
24.
of scores.
Yeah, all right. I'll take 29 points. That's fine. I have the over barely, and I've got the Steelers. I hate to say this point total would be like a breakout game for the offense, but that's where we are at this stage. I have the Steelers winning 24-17. 24-17. So pretty close to Dave's. I think
barely. That's barely over, right?
It is, yeah. Yeah, that's 41. That's why I laughed when you said that the over-under is at 40.5.
Yeah.
No, for me, I said this to my dad, and I talked about this on Let's Ride for Friday morning. I remember a game, you guys might remember the year. The Steelers played the Browns, I want to say in week 16. It was right around the holidays, right around Christmas time, and they beat the living daylights out of that team. I think it was like 48-0. I mean, it was... What year is that, Bryan?
Christmas Eve 2005. That is the game that James Harrison spiked the fan.
Yeah, and so the headline the next day in the newspapers was Seasons Beatings. And it was just a bloodbath. I told my dad, I was like, give me a game like that. I would love nothing more than a game where the Steelers just beat the living daylights out of the Browns, where we can all kind of sit back and say, this one's in the bag. Let's really scoreboard watch, and let's make sure that the Steelers get in. We shall see. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's gonna happen.
Hey, gentlemen, do you mind?
Bryan takes it out.
Do you mind if I do something here?
Sure.
I don't know if you can see it right there.
Oh yeah, nice. You got to autograph it.
Yeah, that's great.
That fan got kicked out of that fan was like banned from Browns games for life.
You can't run on the field. That's what's going to happen if you go on the field.
Well, yeah, but he got suplexed by a player. Like, I feel like that's punishment enough. I mean,
no, then everyone will run on the field and get suplexed by a player.
You know, that's the fitting punishment.
Yeah.
Jeff,
I really want to read this because this is crazy, and you guys might want to read this. This is the scenarios that the NFL is putting out there of what they're going to do with various things.
And this is from the league. This is not
this
like
is from the league.
Okay.
This is scenario 3. There was 3 scenarios under number 1. This is number 2 of various things. It says, if Baltimore defeats Cincinnati in week 18, it will have defeated Cincinnati, a divisional opponent, twice, but will not be able to host a playoff game because Cincinnati will have a higher winning percentage for a 16-game schedule than Baltimore will for a 17-game schedule. If Baltimore defeats Cincinnati, and if those 2 clubs are scheduled to play a wild card game against one another, the site for that game would be determined by a coin toss.
Oh my God.
If Cincinnati wins the week 18 game, or if Baltimore and Cincinnati are not scheduled to play one another in the wild card round, the game sites would be determined by the regular scheduling process. So the Bengals are the AFC North champions. They are going to get that seed, whether they win this game or not. But if they lose this game to the Ravens and they get matched up against the Ravens in the wild card, they're not going to give the home game to Cincinnati. They will coin flip it.
Reminds me of the scene in the movie. It reminds me of the scene in the movie Friday Night Lights when Permian's trying to get into the playoffs and it's a coin toss.
Yeah.
And that's how they figure out who gets in.
So Cincinnati does have something to play for. They want to play to beat the Ravens, so a coin toss cannot come into it. If they beat the Ravens, no matter what, they host a game in the first round.
That dreadful field. Man, that field is bad luck. Gosh, it's bad luck. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting stuff. All right, do we have abbreviated trivias tonight, Bryan?
Yeah, I've got a quickie. So this guy played for both of the Steelers and the Browns.
Joe Hayden. Oh, sorry.
Yes, Dave wins. All right. Oh, it's not Joe Hayden.
I just went for it.
This gentleman, upon being drafted by the Pittsburgh
Orpheus Roy.
Can I get rid of Dave here? Can I just take him off the screen?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So this gentleman, upon being drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, said, "Congratulations to the head coach. You just drafted the best linebacker in the league." And I believe it was in the 5th round. And he was a gentleman that played for Florida A&M. Who is he? He was known as the Hitman.
Played for the Steelers out of Florida A&M.
Yes.
I was going to say Florida A&M, no, or was it Florida? James Pierre, is he Florida A&M or Florida International?
He's Florida Atlantic, isn't he?
Or whatever it is. Yeah, there's so many of those Florida whatevers.
I have no clue.
This gentleman also played in the famous snow game for the Browns that the Steelers won 36-33.
When was that game again? I'm trying to
2001.
2003 season.
Okay, the famous.
But 2002 wasn't
2002 season, 2003.
Yeah, it was in 2003.
So I'm just trying to think of someone who played for both the Steelers and the Browns. I have no idea the Florida A&M.
He wore the number 50.
Is it Holmes?
That's got to be Holmes, right?
Ernie Hitman Holmes.
I didn't know he was called Hitman. I don't remember that.
He's also a guy that said, "I should have listened to Bill Cowher. I felt underappreciated and I left." He said, "You will not get the same treatment from the Rooneys anywhere else, and you really need to stick around."
Wasn't he drafted the same year as Orpheus Roy?
Yes, 96.
I went for Orpheus Roy on that one. I'm sorry.
Well, if he was in that snow game, that he might have been the one that was responsible for trying to tackle Chris Fumatu Mafala on the draw and didn't get the job done. All right. That's good. I didn't know that. All right. Is that it for you, Bryan?
That's it.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Okay. I'm up. Mine is not nearly as this is our abbreviated trivia for tonight. And it's this.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
What?
I just realized I called him Ernie Holmes. It was Earl Holmes. And I knew that. I
didn't know if he had a different nickname.
I didn't mean to. Sorry for that burst.
Oh, that's
or
quite
no, wait,
all right,
did I call him Earl Holmes? Now I got to go back and listen.
Let's move on. Let's move on with our lives. Here we go.
All right. The Pittsburgh Steelers have the opportunity in this final game to finish the season with three players getting 800 yards or more receiving. Who already has over 800 yards receiving for the Steelers this year?
I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson.
Deontay Johnson's got 844. Who are the next two that have a chance to get to 800, and how close do you think they are?
Pat Freiermuth and George Pickens.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that Freiermuth is closer than Pickens. I'll say that Freiermuth needs, let's say 50.
Freiermuth is very close. He is. I'm going to agree with Jeff that he's in the 700s.
They are both in the 700s. They're actually only separated by 3 yards.
Wow.
732 to 729. So therefore, that means Pat Freiermuth needs 68 yards, while George Pickens needs 71 yards in order to reach 800 for the season. My question is, what player on the Pittsburgh Steelers has the least amount of receiving yards, but still more than zero. They actually have receiving yards, but they don't. But who has the least amount of receiving yards this year?
Is it Gunnar Olszewski?
No, Gunner's up there pretty good, man. Gunner's
Zach
53.
Derek Watt?
Derek Watt is one of 3 players tied for the next to lowest. Derek Watt has 11 receiving yards on 5 receptions.
Miles Boykin.
Miles Boykin also has 11 receiving yards on 2 receptions.
Okay. Jeff said Zach Gentry.
No, Gentry's over 100.
Yeah, Gentry.
Gentry's got more than Hayward. 3 more yards than Hayward.
And Hayward had a 45-yard catch in one game.
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson. Benny Snell football?
Benny Snell is actually ahead of these guys. He's got 17.
Ant Mac.
Anthony McFarland in his one game had 2 receptions for 11 yards. So therefore he's the other 11 yarder. You are missing the player with the least amount of yards.
Oh no, it's not Connor Hayward because he had that.
Cody White.
Cody White, 1 reception for 2 yards.
I started to think
I didn't even know he dressed.
Yes, he had 1 game, 1 reception for 2 yards.
He's a practice squad elevation for 1 game.
Yeah. Schultz had a good guess. He said Kenny Pickett, but no, that was actually a really good guess. No, it was not Kenny Pickett, but because Kenny Pickett didn't catch it because Najee Harris threw a 4-yard pass in there to someone. I can't remember who caught that one.
Yeah, I think that was a wildcat, kind of like that pop pass.
Yeah, well, remember, Chase Claypool has a touchdown throw this year.
Yeah,
and he's not even with the Steelers anymore. But no, I was wondering if you guys knew who had the lowest yards. So there you go.
Yeah,
all done.
Good. All right, perfect. Let's do final thoughts. Bryan, go for it.
We never thought we were going to be in this position, but there were a lot of us that said, "Hey, remember, we've seen this movie before. It's probably not going to happen, but Mike Tomlin's the kind of guy that could get him there." We talked about Mike Tomlin earlier in this show, and Mike Tomlin is the one getting him there. So you might find a lot of things not to like about Mike Tomlin. I'm not going to convince you at this point in his career to go ahead and change your opinion. I just know that there's a lot of coaches that when you start out 2-6, you're either being fired or you're just phoning it in and you have lost the team. This man never loses his team, and that's why I think he is one of the 3 greatest coaches in the last 50 years in Pittsburgh.
All right, very good, Dave. Final thoughts.
What was that last line? He was one of the 3 greatest coaches in the last 50 years. Sorry. I don't know if Jeff appreciated that one.
I had to try it.
I was doing something on another tab, and I just heard him finish. And I was like, all right, Dave, go ahead.
Go. All right. I was saying several weeks ago, I didn't have lofty expectations of the Steelers making the postseason because I didn't expect them to go 4-0 in the last quarter. They still haven't. They still have to go 4-0. But I thought that was a really big ask. But as this is going on, the Steelers are coming through. And that's why it's so excited. So that's why I didn't have, like I said, hey, I'm not setting up these crazy expectations to make the postseason. But now it's just becoming a reality more and more every week. Whether or not the Steelers make the playoffs isn't as big of a story for the entire season for me as if they win this game or not. If the Steelers win this game and don't make the playoffs, it's still a team that finished the season 4-0, on the rise, everything else. If the Steelers don't, they obviously can't make the playoffs if they don't win this game. But if they don't make the playoffs and they don't win this game, it's, they couldn't quite get there. They couldn't quite get over 500. They finished pretty strong, but they couldn't take care of Cleveland at home. It's going to change everything. This game is actually pretty important. I'm still not one that really feels the need to have that, no losing season streak. it's crazy. It's great, but that's also not the standard. The standard isn't to not have a losing season. That's why I'm not worried about it. But that 8-9 versus 9-8 really is going to give, it goes really big into the perception of what this season is going to ultimately be. So for this team to finish off strong, finish 9-8, and if other things don't go your way, then other things don't go your way. That's got to be the goal. And then you just sit back and say, hopefully scoreboard watching pays off.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be stressful, I'm sure. And hopefully we have another one of these Steelers previews next week where we're actually looking at another game. And we'll be back either way. But still, hopefully we're actually previewing another game. But a good show, gentlemen. And we will be back, all three of us, on the post-game show after the game on Sunday. So make sure you check us out there. Other than that, Dave, you know how to send us out.
Hey.
See you next week, folks. Go Steelers.
Everybody else gets a little tight.